Did you know that there is, albeit, maybe marginal research, there's still research suggesting that getting dirty and even eating dirt has health benefits? Look it up. See what you find. When you think about it, though, dirt's pretty important for humanity and really all the rest of God's creation. It really, I don't mean this to be too much of a pun, but everything rests on dirt. But beyond that, soil-based organisms make us happier and smarter. People say that working in a garden with your hands increases self-image and helps regulate bodily functions, helps regulate the immune system, reduces inflammation, helps break down foods for us. It assists the earth assists us in detoxification. I think that we all need some of that. And sometimes when you're outside just playing in the dirt, you even smile more, so they say. Healthy soil provides for plants and animals. It gives access to nutrients and air and water. Dirt supports all those things. And some believe, and this you can look up, that eating dirt or clay can help improve stomach issues, soften skin, alter skin tone, and offer protective benefits during pregnancy. It treats illness by absorbing the toxins. Interesting. Now, I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I'll admit to have eaten a few mud pies in my younger days. Most of you did too. And plus, based on something that I used to hear a lot when I was younger, it would seem that dirt has healing properties as well for anything from a bee sting to a broken thumb. It's probably a little bit more of a guy thing, but a lot of us have heard that phrase, rub some dirt on it, you're fine. When we've complained about some minor cut or injury or maybe something even a bit more serious, you can ask my children, they've heard that a lot. And do you remember a few weeks back when I mentioned that when I was 16, my house had burned down and my football coach called the neighbor that same afternoon wanting to make sure that I was going to be at the game the next night. That was one of his favorite sayings, Coach Armstrong. Something like that, or some variation. On one occasion, I injured my thumb. It turned out to be broken, and it got caught in a mesh jersey when a guy tackled me. And I called timeout, ran to the sideline, and my thumb was swelling up. I couldn't move it. It still pops a lot. And I said, Coach Armstrong, I think my thumb's broken. And I don't remember exactly what he said, or I wouldn't say it here, probably, but the gist of it was quit whining, get back in the game, and which I did. We taped it at halftime, and we made it through. Today's passage is one of 45 passages or times that in the Bible dirt is mentioned in one form or another, and it's one of the very few that mentions dirt in a positive light. And the passage involves God's prophet Elisha. But beyond that, there's just a lot to it. Now, the prophet Elisha was an interesting guy. And keep in mind, I'm talking about Elisha, not Elijah. It's confusing. Elisha, which I'll mess this up a couple of times, I'm sure. So I'm really talking about Elisha no matter what I say. He was Elijah's assistant. And he took over for Elijah, literally took up his mantle when Elijah, left on those chariots of fire and was taken from the earth. Elisha was not, he wasn't necessarily the kind of prophet who preached warnings and called the Israelites back to faith. He was not the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood type of prophet. He was a bit more of an action guy, a miracle worker extraordinaire. And he takes center stage in 2 Kings, starting at about chapter 2. He starts performing miracles. And they're listed in there, giving military advice to the local kings, helping widows pay off debts, making iron axe heads float. You don't see that very often. Bringing people back to life, curing food poisoning. I mean, Elisha did different things. And these miracles, and if you read in 2 Kings, which I know that's on your list this week, is to find 2 Kings. Guess what? It follows 1 Kings, just so you know, if you get confused. Then you're going to read about a number of those things that Elisha did. But probably of all the wonderful, interesting, and maybe a little bizarre things that Elisha did, he's probably most famous for this miracle he performed in chapter 5 when he cured Naaman of leprosy. Now, I'll give you a quick warning. If you're going to go back and read about Elisha, beginning in chapter 2, you're going to find a story in there that is very dear to me as I lose more and more hair, where Elisha, a couple of boys were making fun of him for being bald, and Elisha, you know, we don't know how he did it for sure, but a couple of bears came out of the woods and mauled those boys. So, you know, it's in the Bible. And so when I say that Elisha, I got that right, was an interesting guy, he really was. I mean, he was different than most prophets. So read it. You'll enjoy it. But this story, in these 17 verses that I read, there's enough information in here in that little short passage for a really good full-length movie. There's at least 2 would-be stars, another 2 or 3 key folks that would be co-stars in the movie, and then 2 major players that aren't even human. Great characters, captivating story, plenty of action, extreme emotions, celebrations. It's all in there. But what I want to point out this morning is that embedded in this great passage are at least 3 things for you and I to really take notice of. And I'll list them now, but then we're going to kind of wade back through them. First is the blessings of humble wisdom. And the second, the blessings of reluctant obedience. And the third thing's the benefits of getting dirty. And so I want us to look at the characters involved, and then we'll work our way through that narrative. And I think at the end of that, you'll kind of see how this fits together. At least I hope so. The first character, obviously, name listed first thing in the scripture this morning, Naaman. Naaman was the 5-star general of the Syrian army. Syria and Aram are the same place there, and he was the key leader, accomplished military mind, and high-ranking, the highest-ranking military official there. But he had leprosy. Now, it's interesting to note that had he been in the camp of Israel, he would have not been allowed to hold office in anything because he'd be unclean. But since he was a Syrian, God had used him in past times for victory, and in the process of that, he had taken some slaves from Israel. So the Syrians had actually overthrown Israel a time or two. And Naaman was the guy who was in charge of all that. But he had leprosy, and he wanted to be cured of it. So, I guess when you have leprosy, it's not a secret. Naaman's slave girl, the mistress to his wife, mentioned to his wife, if only he could go to Israel. There's a prophet there that could heal him. Interesting. The highest ranking official in the military in Syria is going to take advice from the lowest ranking person in his household, in that community, a slave girl, but a slave girl from Israel that God had put in his household. And this slave girl, interestingly enough, was one who was willing to speak. She was willing and bold enough to, if she knew the answer to something, if she knew that a word would help, she was willing to address it. And so she says to her mistress, if only he could go to Israel. That's 2 characters. The third character, the Syrian king. The Syrian king needs his military leader. He needs Naaman. And so when Naaman comes to him and says, there's a prophet in Israel that maybe can cure me, then the Syrian king says, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, we'll do that. I'll send a letter to the Israel king telling him that, hey, we need this done. Now, you need to understand that in this time and in this situation, more than likely, Israel was paying tribute to Syria so that they wouldn't beat them up, every other weekend and steal their lunch money, because they were not as strong as Syria. And so this is a request, and a genuine request from the Syrian king. I'll send a letter. Well, Naaman packs up, well, what do we figure? About 750 pounds of silver, 10 sets of clothes, and gold as well. I mean, it's like he's carrying 3 suitcases full of cash down to Israel. He gets there with the letter. And you remember what the king said? What? Who's this guy think I am? I can't cure this fella. And he takes it as an affront and says, he's trying to trick me so that they can attack me again. Because if I can't do what he wants to do, this is like paying a tribute. There's no way I can survive in this. So the king of Israel immediately becomes angry and scared about what's going to happen next whenever this leprosy is not cured. Now, we get to Elisha then. Elisha hears about this and says, send him out here to me. And at this point, it's really a testimony to Elisha's unique personality. Elisha is a miracle worker, there's no doubt, and all of Israel knows it. In fact, the slave girls that live in Syria know of Elisha's miracle working power, that he is a man of God. And so Elisha sends word, send Naaman out to me. And when Naaman gets there, Elisha sends a servant out to tell Naaman what to do to cure his leprosy. Naaman, of course, throws a fit. I can't believe he's not going to come out myself. I want him to do some magic on me and rub his hand over the spot, something like that, and cure this and clean me. And he sends his servant? This is not going to go well. And once again, this servant, this slave of Naaman says, yeah, but coach, if he had wanted you to do something difficult, like, catch 5 unicorns and or find these certain flowers, or if he'd wanted you to do something really difficult, wouldn't you have done it? And Naaman says, yeah, maybe I would. So then he reluctantly takes the trip down to the Jordan River. And of course, he also, in the process, says, that's a stream. We've got real rivers back in Syria. Why couldn't I just bathe in those? But instead, he listens to the advice of this person that's the lowest person on the totem pole. And he goes down and he bathes in the Jordan River. And 7 times he dunks himself, comes out clean with the skin of a young boy. And that's the next character, the Jordan River. The healing properties that are activated on faith. But I want you to think about, did Naaman have a great deal of faith in this? It didn't take much. What it took was a willingness to be obedient, even if he was reluctant. And so Naaman goes down, he dunks himself in the Jordan River, and he's healed. And then he comes back, and he's a happy man. He's cured of his leprosy. He's going back clean. And he goes back to Elisha and says, I need to pay you for this. Forgive me for the doubts earlier, for my attitude. I need to pay you for this. What can I do? And of course, Elisha says, nothing. I'm a servant of the Lord. I'm not going to take anything. And so Naaman does something that I think we often overlook. I know I've overlooked it a bunch of times when I've read this passage. Naaman asks for some soil. He says, okay, well, if you won't let me pay you, will you at least give me enough soil, enough dirt to load up 2 mules that I can take back with me? Because I never again want to stand on anything but holy ground. I never again want to put, when I offer sacrifices, whenever I do my prayers, I want to be here. But I can't be here. I've got to go back to Syria. So would you please let me take a couple of loads of dirt so that I'll have a place that I can go to. The blessings of humble wisdom of a servant girl, a servant of Elijah, a servant of Naaman. Those were the catalysts for all the action that took place in this. It wasn't the important people. It were those folks who were on the fringe, those who were on the outside. And a reminder to us that you never know where wisdom is going to come from. You never know where the word of the Lord is going to come from when it speaks to you. It might be from here, it might be from there, it might be from the organ, it might be from someone outside that you've met. It might be someone that you've never met. But never discount those words when they come, regardless of where they come from. And then that second, the blessings of reluctant obedience. You know, the kids got it right this morning. Do you always do what you're told? Do you always do what you should do? Yeah, I know some of you. I know me. But even reluctant obedience carries with it the power of God. When we don't feel like doing the things that God's called us to do or the things that we have been gifted to do. Well, we've done them so many times. What's one more time? What does it matter? That reluctant obedience, the blessings from reluctant obedience are just amazing because they're just as wonderful as the blessings of obedience. And then the benefits of getting dirty. For Naaman, he never wanted to kneel on anything except holy ground. Each of us, somewhere in our lives, in our homes, in our cars, there's a place that we can go that we know that God is there with us. It's here, hopefully, obviously, all the time. But we carry something with us. Maybe it's an attitude. Maybe it shows up in a song on the radio or a place in your house or some other place that you go to that you know is holy ground for you. Go to those places. Go to those places often. In fact, I think in our minds, we can go to those places anytime. And so let this odd story from 2 Kings be a lesson to us, an encouragement to us, a challenge to us to recognize the blessings of humble wisdom, the blessings of reluctant obedience, and the benefits of getting dirty, having our place, and going there often. Amen.